I'd love to say the partnership is about money raining from the sky and sitting on the beach. I don't think that's entirely fair. That being said, the job has changed, and it's much more, I would argue, compensated for the work that you are doing. Now, physically as a partner, the job's about selling. As a partner, you are expected to deliver returns to your business. Now, this is not 100% true in every partnership type of role. Some of them are much more actively focused on the work. Some of them are much more in an intellectual or driving thought leadership. But for the most part, a partner or a senior member of the management of a consultancy firm is meant to upsell current business and break new business. Meant to develop relationships. Not usually about project managing, especially as you get into more senior partnership types of roles. Your job is to get the case going, set the tone for it, and then usually check out, although you're probably popping up for occasional presentations. Instead, you're spending your time pitching, writing proposals, speaking at conferences, writing white papers, and developing the long-term foundation for how you're going to build your portfolio of long-term clients. You're mentoring managers. Consultancies are really about bringing people through the ranks and developing them into future partners and therefore revenue generators for the firm. And as part of that, you're probably helping to lead the firm. In a small firm, that's a much more of the role than in a large firm. But, and I'll talk about this a little bit more in detail, the partnership role really does create a lot of opportunities for you to become a leader within a consultancy environment. So what do you get? Money. There is wealth creation at the partnership level. Just like in every service provider firm or service professional type of firm, at some level you eat what you kill. Your wealth is determined by your ability to drive results, but there's a real upside opportunity. There's autonomy. The further you get up as a partner, the more you are responsible for your day-to-day schedule, your line of business, and your results, as opposed to whether or not the partner that you've been working for as a manager likes you, likes what you do. There's comparative job security. The partnership jump and earning the partnership is one of those moments where you go from I am essentially a hired contract employee to somebody who is very much a part of the firm and therefore harder, although certainly not impossible, to separate from the firm. Also, in many cases, there is a revolving door. Many cases, and I know for Bain specifically, lots of partners, once they become partners, have the ability to go on sabbatical or take jobs at non-professional services firms and come back to the firm later. There's intellectual stimulation like no other job. You're working on many, many things at once. You're going from driving one project and helping on another to having your finger in a dozen or a half a dozen pies. There is prestige. Being a partner is about respect in the marketplace and especially in your area. And then there are a lot of interesting opportunities both inside and outside the firm that the partnership role tends to expose you to. Now, here's the downside. Everybody believes that the partnership is about I control my life now. And while I think that is while that's certainly what people say, I would argue strongly that it's not the case. This picture to me is actually bang on what the partners that I know will say, which is, I thought I was getting control becoming a partner. That's actually the opposite of the case. What they'll say is, the sooner you give up your calendar to your assistant, the better off you are, because you have no hope at all anymore of scheduling anything other than a 15-minute break to get a muffin in the middle of a meeting. Your day will be chock full of all of the different things that you're involved in or getting pulled into as a representative of the firm. There's also some downsides in terms of your flexibility if you choose to move on from consultancy. There's a real struggle as a partner to move jobs. There are very few jobs that pay as well as the partnership role, give you the intellectual stimulation, and have the job security as being a partner at a major consultancy. And then frankly, you're not that easy to employ. You're highly paid. And as a management consultant, especially a partner, people will often look at you, especially ones who haven't hired senior consultants, and say, you actually don't have execution experience. I don't know how you will behave when you actually need to get things done. So it can be a very difficult sell. So what comes next? Let's be honest, in most firms, partners don't leave that often. If you've gone through the pain of becoming a partner, you often stay. And remember that your wealth generation opportunities from the partnership in most firms or from a senior role just increases over time. It does compound. When you do leave, the most likely thing that you'll go do is take a role within the firm. Specialties, practice area heads, departmental roles, perhaps even spin-offs from the firm. That's the most likely place that people will go because it's a very natural adjunct. Oftentimes as partners, when people leave, they go to divisional head or SVP roles, or most likely heads of strategy, at larger companies usually, which is just what you've been functioning in as a consultant or as a partner in a major consultancy. Occasionally, partners will switch to other service firms. This is much more true in smaller firms or highly specialized firms. They'll take CEO roles. I've certainly seen it. That's usually ex-clients with whom they've developed relationships. And then every once in a while, they'll make a jump into a private equity, venture capital, or even occasionally to a hedge fund. I've seen this a couple of times with partners and senior partners. It's just a very difficult transition because the work is so radically different. But it does happen from time to time. The other thing that's not mentioned here is some go into government, some go into public service. The partnership type of role does afford you the visibility to do things like that later on in your career. So the upshot on the senior level value proposition in consulting is that the partner role really can be fantastic if you, number one, you want to live well and develop wealth. You can be highly paid, but you will not be a billionaire and nobody will ever look at you as a master of the universe. Still a great, great job from a wealth creation perspective. Number two, you recognize that you're a salesperson or a sales manager and you have a P&L. You're not a corporate executive. You're not running marketing for a big firm unless you choose to do it for your consultancy for a while. You are basically a salesperson and in many cases a sole contributor trying to marshal resources to close a deal. You got to enjoy being a smart person. In many ways, you're a well-paid professor. You've achieved some level of tenure and companies will call you to opine and to speak with great levels of expertise in certain areas. You need to take control. Successful partners really build their practice on what they do well and they love, and they set boundaries. Again, because nobody is going to tell you not to work so hard, this job can actually spiral. And I've known a lot of senior consultants who spend 80, 90, 100 hours a week well into their 40s and 50s, wondering why they're doing it. And for that, I don't think it's a fantastic job. And then finally, embrace the flexibility within your firm. There are so many chances to try things and to reinvent yourself. There's international travel, there's new practice areas, there's doing things like externships where you go work at a firm, there's nonprofits. And being a senior level consultant in these firms really does afford you a lot of those opportunities. So let me close before we moved into the Q&A. Just my top level thoughts. Compared to with other careers, consultancy really can be very high on the value versus effort equation. You can make a great deal of money in consulting, and if you manage it right, it can be a tremendous amount of fun and not always require a tremendous amount of work. Especially once you've made a partner level commitment, it can be a really great long-term gig with very little downside. The culture and the people are paramount. You never forget that consultancy it's a human capital business. And if you love the culture and the people, it really can be a wonderful, uplifting career. If you don't, it's brutal. Because finally, a consultancy really is about the people. Very few companies have as much fluidity as consultancies. If you like variety and intellectual stimulation, it only gets better with time. Because you really can see so many opportunities within the walls of a consultancy to do so many different things and explore so many different areas. Nobody's telling you no in most cases, as long as you hit your numbers. That said, if you fundamentally want to be a corporate executive driving a business, it gets harder and further away the more senior you get in a consulting environment. It's that much harder to get the opportunities to do those types of work because people will be skeptical about your ability to be a driver of businesses and not a strategic advisor. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Caitlin to drive the Q&A. But again, I want to thank you for that, and I hope it was a useful view of the career long-term value proposition in consultancies.